Today I thought I'd do a little video about just general tips about Paris. What I'm trying to aim for is more people who've already been to Paris or just generally travel a lot. You can buy your metro tickets on your phone. Just be careful when you're going through the doors. When you're putting your phone over it, kind of just like have the other hand there as well, because it would be really easy for someone to just grab it and run. On the metro itself, there are these seats on some of them that kind of fold up and down. Be aware that when the metro gets busy, if you're sitting on those, you actually have to stand up because it gives more space for people to stand like sardines next to each other. Now, pickpockets, there are tons of them in the metro, and you always hear these announcements when you are in the metro. They're usually done in French, and they let you know that just be careful. If I have a handbag that can be easily opened up, I always put a hand over it. If I have stuff in my pocket, I kind of hover my hand over it just to make sure that no one can pickpocket me that easily. It's just a real pain when you get off the metro and realize I don't have a phone anymore. There are so many bus lines around Paris, and sometimes it's so much nicer to just be on the bus and see, Paris go by. Just be aware that if you have a dog, you can't get on the bus with the dog, which is sad. When you're going through the doors, the ones that you have to hold open, it's polite to keep it open for the person coming behind you for about 3 seconds. Generally, a 3-second rule is there, unless they're older, in which case, give them another couple of seconds. Tips on how to do cafes in Paris. First up, if there is sunlight, everyone's going to want that seat. Everyone's just fighting for that seat. Don't stand around politely because that's not what Parisians do. They don't stand around. They will look at people leaving that chair, and they're just in place to swoop in and sit down. I do that. I'm not ashamed to say that I do that. So what you need to do is to keep up and don't wait for people to sit you down. The worst thing that could happen is that the owner or the people who work there are going to come and tell you, I had this already reserved for someone else. Okay, fine, I'll get up. But the idea is that if you don't do that, someone else will, and you lose the seat. When you're in the cafe, know what you're going to order. This really pisses people off when people take their time with the ordering. You can sit as long as you want once you have your order, but if they come to your table, tell them immediately. It's not because Parisians are impatient, not at all. It's just because there's a different pace to Paris. I've worked in a cafe. It's hard when someone is taking their time and you have 1,000 other things on your mind. Know what to order when they come up to you or say, please come back. It's fine, but be aware that they might not come back for a while because they have other things happening. Another tip about cafes, orange juice. Now, when you've been out a lot, you might want some vitamin C in your system. Orange juices in Paris, usually they write orange pressé, and when they write orange, they mean one orange. It's a thimble of orange juice with a lot of ice. Sometimes they add the water in, or maybe they bring a bit of water next to it for you to mix it in. I generally find that it's not worth the money that you pay, which is actually quite expensive for a thimble of orange juice. Or you could go to the supermarkets, and there are these machines that they have that they juice oranges right there. So it's all very fresh, and you can buy a whole bottle of them for probably the same, no, not probably, for the same price of an orange juice at a cafe. As we're talking about cafes and restaurants and all that, remember to always have 10 euros on you, because that when you go to a lot of places, they say they don't take cards unless it's over 10 euros. Whenever I'm traveling and drinking my way through any city, one of the things that really bothers me is, where am I going to find a toilet when I leave this bar or cafe or whatever? There are public toilets. I personally don't like to take them because you just go to any cafe, the normal Parisian cafes, and you can always have a coffee, like an espresso, at the bar, not sitting down, but at the bar you can have one for €1.20, which is great because you have a little pick-me-up and use the toilet. Some people do eat lunches at their desks with a little sandwich, which I find quite sad actually. But usually what you do is you go out, nothing too expensive, but you sit at a restaurant, you take an hour, you have your lunch, you have a little dessert after, maybe a little coffee. But the idea is to, if you're taking a break from work to eat, you eat. You don't rush through it because you have to get back. Work will be there when you go back. If you're going out to eat, what is great about Paris, I love this, is that a lot of restaurants have a dish of the day, plat du jour, or just a menu of the day, which is an entrée, plat et dessert. And you can have that for great prices, actually. It's very good value. Something else, I am actually guilty of it myself sometimes. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but it happens, is people eating or drinking and walking. That is a big no-no. People will be like, because the idea is that when you eat, you have to be respectful to yourself and sit down and enjoy it. Take your time, eat good things. If you're eating and walking, it's not really a thing that French people do. There's so many benches and parks in Paris. Just sit down for a minute, take your time, eat your food, and start walking again. Right, let's get to reservations at restaurants. Now, if you want to go to a normal place like bistro or something, I wouldn't worry about it. Also, Paris has so many restaurants, just walk out of that one and go to the next one. There's always a place to sit and have dinner. But if you want to go to a place that is, has very good reviews or is fancy or whatever, you would have to reserve 2 weeks in advance. 2 weeks is enough. Now, when you reserve, usually there are different hours that they give you, some of the restaurants, where they tell you, okay, do you want to come at this time, the first service, the second service, or the third service. In Paris, the time that people usually have dinner is at 9:30 p.m., which might be a little late for some people. Not so late if you're Spanish. But what happens is that those times get filled up real quick because that's the time everybody wants to go out. Now you may wonder, why do Parisians eat dinner so late? Because there's a thing called the apéro. It's a thing that you do, when you come home from work, your partner might tell you, do you want a little apéro or something? You drink a little something in the around 6, 7 p.m. and which will tide you over until 9 p.m. But the idea is to enjoy your time. What to wear? Okay, there's so many questions about this. I'm gonna do a proper video about this at some point. Just to make it short, what I think is important when traveling is footwear, because I personally like to walk everywhere because that's the only way you get the actual feel of a place. And Parisians do walk everywhere. We try to limit public transport and definitely cars as much as possible. What we have come up with is city shoes, which are a sort of sneakers. They're not sneakers as in for sports. No, they're not supposed to be extremely comfortable. They're supposed to be comfortable enough, more than dress shoes, but not so comfortable that they look sporty. But that's the thing that people usually wear. You don't see a lot of people going around on high heels unless they're thick heels or they're going to a special event, especially as lots of Parisian sidewalks are cobblestones, so this is a me thing, probably not a Parisian thing. Paris is not the cleanest city on the planet. If you wear open-toed shoes, it's gonna get dirty. your feet. And I don't enjoy that. So maybe you don't want to do that either. Right, my favorite topic, the movies. Paris is an amazing city if you like movies. There are always movies from all around the world in the cinemas. And what you should know is that the night for the cinema is Wednesdays. Because that's every Wednesday, that's when all the new movies come in. Now, if you don't speak French and you want to go to the movies, don't worry. French people actually like seeing movies in their original language with subtitles. So all of the movies from outside of France have two versions. There's the dubbed version and there's the VOST, which is the original version. So when you buy a ticket, you can make sure that it's VOST and you can still see all the movies that you've been waiting for and other ones. I'm still a big fan of the radio. When I'm indoors and I'm, cooking or something, I like a little bit of radio on. My favorite station is FIP. They have the best music, I find, very varied. They do a bit of jazz, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Sometimes it's very calming, sometimes it's very upbeat. I get a lot of inspiration from there because for new music to look for. So keep FIP in mind. The water of Paris is perfectly fine to drink, by the way. There is no need to buy water. You can always ask for water and bread when you're eating. They have to give it to you by law. Lots of people, me as well, we take our bottles of water with us everywhere, especially when it's hot. And what's good about Paris is that given the fact that the water is okay to drink, there are all these fountains around the city where you can fill up your water whenever you want to. Now, how do you find those places? There's a website where you can check where those fountains are, almost like Google Maps, and it tells you where they are, and you can fill up on water and not use plastic. What's great about Paris is that the supermarkets are open 7 days a week. And on weekdays, they're open till 10 p.m., which is amazing. And even if in your neighborhood there is one supermarket that closes early on the weekend, there's always another one that closes late. So you'll be fine. The only time I actually end up buying a lot of anything, is when I go to the neighborhood markets, which are very nice, excellent quality, much cheaper. I end up going once a week. So I buy all of my fresh produce there. Right, Parisians do not line up, except when they do. If you see Parisians lining up for something, it's probably worth lining up for because they don't like lining up. You usually see them for the movies or some amazing restaurants that don't take reservations, or some art galleries. If you see them lining up, that's probably something to do. All right, I hope you have something to write with. I'm going to talk about websites. The best thing to do is to search in French. There are so many websites out there that are very well known, but they just don't work for Paris. Some of them I've checked and I just really don't see truth in what they're saying. So what websites should you use? I would say French ones. You might say, Aida, I don't speak French, I can't read it. In which case I tell you, do what I do when I go to a place where I don't speak the language. Use Google Chrome to do the translation for you. First of all, for transportation, you can use RATP or RATP, which every single Parisian has on their phone. As for the metro, I use it to understand whether or not there are disruptions on the metro that I'm taking. It's very useful to have. If you want to know how to get from one place to another, honestly, Google Maps works perfectly. Of course, you can use Uber, but I personally prefer the French company G7, which is a taxi company, and they have an app that is similar to Uber, so you know what's going to happen, that you put in where you're going to go, you know that there won't be any problems with the money and anything, especially because the G7 ones, because they're a taxi company, they can use the bus lanes and you will get where you're supposed to go faster. For restaurants, just generally, there's Zigzag, Le Bonbon, Le Fooding. Something that I think is very good is Figaro, which is a newspaper. They might not have the most trendy of restaurants listed there, but what they do have is very reliable because their readers are very meticulous. Now, for going out, there are lots of websites out there. What I find is really good is Bierreduc. It's all about concerts, theater, shows. The City Hall also has its own website. It's Que faire à Paris, and it's very good. It's what Parisians use generally to find out what's going on that weekend. A lot of the times there are free events happening around the city, and how do you know about them? Sometimes you just walk by them and they're there. Sometimes if you're looking for them, you can find them on this website. It's really nice. There's also Sortir à Paris, Time Out Paris, that works well as well. I recently found Tout de Suite. Seems okay. I think it's okay. And of course, YouTube, which is a great place to find information about Paris. My channel is not generally aimed at people, newbies. It's usually for people who it's not their first rodeo. They've either been to Paris. It's kind of behind the scenes of Paris for people who, wonder. They don't live here, but they might one day, or they would like to, and they just want to do it differently, like really get into the vibe of Paris as the way we live it. If you would like to have more information like that, subscribe please, and we'll see where it goes.